today's test we're going to be testing the 53 grain VMAX with benchmark powder, Lake City brass, and Remington 7.5 small rifle Ventress primers in this rifle that I put together to be a daytime coyote gun. I'm kind of switching over to bolt guns for coyote hunting stuff, but I had already built this gun for this intention, so we're going to test it anyway, because it could still be a really good shooter, or it could be a total turd, because we've had a lot of those recently. So, that being said, the parameters for today's test is that we're shooting around 100 yards. It's a little bit shorter than that, but we're going to say 100 for simplicity's sake. We're going to show velocities as we're shooting, or I will say them verbally, and we're just going to shoot three shot groups on paper. The 53 grain VMAX has been a favorite bullet of mine for varmints for a long time. It has performed spectacularly on critters, so it is a really good performer traditionally, so I'm going to continue testing it in this new barrel. So this barrel is actually a Christensen barrel, and I think that the whole industry kind of knows that they're 50-50 as to whether or not they're going to shoot good or not. And I don't like to say that, but it's just a fact. But we're shooting a 2 to 12 power scope. It's an Athlon scope, and it's got a pretty darn big center reticle, so it's going to make it kind of hard because it blocks out a lot of your direct point of aim, which is a bit of a bummer. But I do like the scope. I think for quick target acquisition on low power, it'll be phenomenal. So anyway, it'll be an interesting test, but all the equipment and the components and everything that we're using in the test will be detailed out in the description of every video. So if you guys are curious on exactly what we are using, I will put that detailed out in the description below the video. So if you have any questions, you are free to comment them, but if you go into that description, it will probably tell you what you want to know. So that being said, we're going to start shooting. I'm going to aim for the center of the big diamond right in the middle of the target, and we're going to be starting with 23.9 grains of benchmark, which is going to be the only powder that we use in this test, and we're just going to be going up in increments. This is technically considered an optimal charge weight test. I don't know if these are going to shoot like crap or if these are going to be really good. This gun is still new to me. The barrel's still new to me. I kind of broke it in a little bit. I've just been shooting it with random stuff. It's nothing specific, but I don't know if it's going to be a good place to start or not, but we got the ammo loaded. We're going to test it, so we're going to go ahead and let it rip. Going for the center target here, and again we are shooting 23.9 grains of benchmark behind that 53 grain Hornady VMAX. Okay, so obviously those actually shot pretty good. The downside is I completely forgot to name velocities as I was shooting, because I was so thrown off by how far off the point of impact was, because I thought it was going to be pretty close to center, and we're not even close. But the accuracy so far is fantastic, so that's really exciting. And the ejection pattern is nuts. Those things are like 30 feet away from me. Okay, so our accuracy was good. The downside is that the velocity kind of sucked as far as consistency. So our average muzzle velocity was 28.05, extreme spread of 105, and a standard deviation of 47. So it's pretty well all over the place. But we're going to keep moving up in powder, see if a little more case volume helps. Doesn't always seem to be the case for me, but I'm going to be optimistic, right? Clearly it has some accuracy potential, so we're already off to a good start. All right, next up is 24.2 grains of benchmark. We're going to be going for the top left diamond here. May have moved it a little too high on that one. They're still on paper, but just barely. 28.50. 28.35. That group up and up a little bit. 29.05 was that last velocity. Our spread did actually improve, but it still wasn't good. Even the accuracy wasn't as good as the first group, but our average velocity was 28.64, extreme spread of 70, and a standard deviation of 30. So it did improve, but again, we're not seeing like really good numbers. It's just better. And again, I'm not using this as an excuse. I am just simply saying that I am struggling a little bit with that huge center dot, which would be really good for fast shooting on critters that are running and stuff. But again, doing this kind of stuff, it's just really not conducive to shooting really small groups. Like, it's usable, but it's pretty tough. I'm not gonna lie. It's covering up most of where I'm even aiming. But we're gonna move on to 24.5 grains of benchmark. We are going up in 0.3 grain increments every charge weight increase. I forgot to say that in the beginning, but all of these are 0.3 of a grain increments. All right, 24.5 grains of benchmark right on the top of the center diamond here. 29.11, 28.63, 29.24. So we're still seeing an improvement in the velocity spread, which is good. We're looking at a average velocity of 2,900, extreme spread of 61, and a standard deviation of 26. If we can get the standard deviation under 15 by the end of this test, I'll be really happy. But again, right now it's kind of crappy, and the velocity is actually not the accuracy isn't great. That first group was awesome, but since then it's kind of been lackluster. Next up is 24.8 grains of benchmark, and we're going to go in for the top right diamond here. Kind of broke that shot off to the left a little bit on accident. 29.86, 3015, and 28.98. Ooh, that's gonna be bad. Ooh, okay, so average muzzle velocity of 29.66, extreme spread of 116, and a standard deviation of 49. So again, just because you're putting more powder in there doesn't always mean your spreads are going to go down, but we have 3 charge weights left, and normally where I put these bullets velocity wise out of like a 16, 18 inch 5.56 is, or in this case a 223 Wylde, which is probably just a 5.56, but I normally push them at like 3100, maybe 3150, so they're not like screaming fast, but they're definitely not slow either. So that's kind of where I was expecting to end this at. I don't know exactly if the spreads are going to be good, but I think we'll be able to get there as far as the maximum velocity, or the velocity threshold that we will reach will probably be in that ballpark here within the next few charges. Another thing to note, brass consistency, and by that I mean literally just how consistent the manufacturer makes the brass itself, can seriously affect your consistency as far as your velocity and even your accuracy. So like if you have really crappy brass where the flash holes are all kinds of different shapes and whatnot, your powder doesn't burn the same. It's just, all that stuff matters, and we're not exactly using like Lapua brass right now, so I'm not going to blame the brass for bad groups or for bad velocities right now, but I just want you guys to keep that in mind if you're doing testing and you feel like you're chasing your tail and you're using really cheap brass or brass that's just not very high quality. If you take a look at it and you can see some inconsistencies, that means it's not good brass. So if they're clearly evident just by looking at them, you should have to measure those differences in order for them to, you know, even matter. But if you can just see it, that's pretty bad. But anyway, I'm ranting at this point. We're going to move on to 25.1 grains of benchmark, and we're going to be going for the left side of the center diamond on this. 3007, 2998, 2992. See, look at that. Now we got like super consistent velocity. We got a good group. Everything just worked out on that one. Before y'all get excited, or before I get excited, I should also mention that just because we shot a 3-shot group that looked good and we had really consistent velocity, something like this needs to be retested, because we just showed a lot of inconsistent velocity and group sizes, and then out of nowhere we got one that shot really good. So that doesn't necessarily mean this is some magical load. You go out and retest this, you could see velocities all over the place and you could see really bad accuracy. So just keep in mind that just because it shoots good once, it's a small sample size, and you should always double check that stuff before you just run with it. So average muzzle velocity of 29.99, extreme spread of 14, and a standard deviation of 6, which is exactly where we wanted to be. I wish the velocity was just a touch faster if this was going to be the load that I settled on, but again, I don't know if this is going to continue to show that kind of accuracy and consistency with velocity, but we showed that we can at least obtain both of those things. Maybe not consistently, but at least once we were able to do it. So we're going to move on. We're going to shoot 2 more groups here. The next one being 25.4 grains of benchmark, and that one's going to go right smack dab in the center of the target. All right, 25.4 grains of benchmark right in the center diamond. This gun is over lubricated and it's literally struggling to chamber just because of the fact that it's got too much goop in there that's trying to freeze right now. So keep that in mind if you're shooting cold weathers like this. You don't want to pile a bunch of gunk on your bolt and then watch it turn into an ice cream cone. 3019, 3100, 3,100 again. So again, we're moving from the previous group looking really good as far as velocity, consistency, and accuracy to a group that was neither of those. The group was okay, but it wasn't good, and the accuracy or the velocity spread was pretty bad. So average muzzle velocity of 3,073, extreme spread of 82, and a standard deviation of 38. So several exponentially times larger spread on the velocity with this one over the last group. So again, don't just run with that one charge weight and assume that it'll always do that, because we probably just got lucky. But we're going to be shooting our last charge of the day next at 25.7 grains. All right, 25.7 grains on the right side of the center diamond. Well, at least I finally got it hitting where I want it to. 31.15, 31.06. I think that's a really good group, but I don't know where that second shot went. Oh wait, I can see it now. All right, so that was actually not a good group. 30.85. Average velocity of 3,100 feet per second, extreme spread of 30, and a standard deviation of 12.5. So we ended up with a pretty good load, essentially, as far as the velocity consistency. I mean, that last charge had good velocity consistency. I can't really see the group very well, but it looks like to me it wasn't great. So I'm not going to say the accuracy was spectacular, but overall, might not be the powder for this gun. If we put some better brass in here, something that is a little more consistent, which I'm not saying Lake brass or Lake City brass is the worst brass you can buy, but it ain't the best. So we could retry that, but I'm not going to. I would say that I'll probably try different powders in this particular setup here and see what burn range this barrel might like a little better potentially. But the bullet clearly has potential in this gun. Like, it showed some great accuracy on a couple groups there, so the bullet can shoot very well in this gun. So that's kind of what I expected, because I've had really good luck with this bullet across the board. I'm not saying like the bullet shoots good in every 223 that I've shot, but most of the time, if I am having a 223 that I'm kind of questioning whether or not it's going to be a shooter, I'll send some of those through it just to see how they do. And typically if they shoot really bad, then that's not a good sign. But they usually just seem very easy to get to shoot decent at the very least. But anyway, that is today's video. It is nothing crazy, but we just wanted to get this particular setup on the channel here and do a little testing with it with some of my favorite bullets, and maybe one of these days we'll do some critter hunting with this gun and we'll try to get that on the channel as well. But thank you guys for watching. Always appreciate the support. Do me a favor, vote in the polls, leave comments and all that good stuff so I can see where you guys want this channel to go in the future, and help me out to decide what you guys are wanting to see. That being said, glorify God in all that you do, stay risen, and we'll see you all in the next video.